Thank you very much for this kind introduction, and thanks a lot for having me at this event. I haven't been here before, so newbie in that respect. I have been to Oslo quite some time ago, and it's great to be back. And the weather is not so bad than my last time, I can tell you. It was like -10 and really, really bad. So, I'm going to talk about 5G for public service media. When I was looking in the agenda before the meeting, I have to confess, it felt a bit alien. I mean, it was about streaming, it was about market, it was about OTT, and this is really something slightly different. But at the end of the day, we as a public service broadcasting company, I mean, I could subscribe basically to all you said just before. The market analysis in Germany is not so different, actually, and we have to live with that. Good. We're facing challenges, you know, content distribution markets. Just to say, today is a very important day for German public broadcasting because the prime ministers of the Bundesländer in Germany today might decide what the future holds for us. They talk about our budget. And there's a lot of concerns and a lot of tension and a lot of objections how we go forward. So tonight, things might have changed for me at least, and I'm kind of curious what's going to happen. I would just touch a little bit about, so to say, context before going into 5G topics. We talked about, you know, linear versus non-linear already. Same for us. I mean, the big question is there's a shift in user behavior towards more online, more on-demand, more time-independent, autonomous consumption of our content and services. And we got to, so to say, take care of that in one way or the other. I don't believe that linear live television and radio gonna be marginal soon in the future, but that's yet to be seen. So the question here is, what is the right balance of doing things? And that, in a way, has nothing to do with distribution itself, the technology, because linear, as we know, can also be OTT streaming. Another thing I see very critically is big tech dominance. I mean, if you just look at the markets right now, and I'll just give you a few examples here, I mean, the markets are, so to say, consolidating. They're getting narrower and narrower. We have these big tech companies, mainly from the west coast of the US, they're dominating everything. They started as small companies, you know, booksellers or a little bit of software like Microsoft, then offered services like cloud, you know, like server farms, and now they're getting into infrastructure, satellites, fiber in the US, undersea cables. They're basically owning the entire value chain from the very beginning to the very end, and they're operating outside any regulation. Now in Europe, we now have two very powerful tools in place, which is the Digital Service Act and the Digital Markets Act, and it's still to be seen. The first applications have been already seen, whether that's really going to be a very potent tool or not in order to contain this development. The other thing I'm a little bit skeptical, personally, we hear a lot of this today, and it's all over the place, is AI. Now, we can certainly do a lot of good things with AI, but I mean, we also, as public service media, have to subscribe to sustainability scopes and objectives. And I see a big clash between that. Recently, you might have heard in the US, there was a discussion, I think Google brought it up, about building new nuclear plants in order to train AI systems. They even went as far as saying, well, can't we have 3 Mile Island in Harrisburg, the one that blew up in 1979, be reactivated in order to train our services, our AIs. Is that sustainable? I'm not really sure about it. The other thing is data sovereignty. I mean, they're training their systems with my data, with your data, with the data of our customers, with what we're doing, and basically at the end of the day, it feels we have no control of what's going on there, and the return is also unclear. Good, but how does 5G fit into this picture? Now, 5G is happening here in 3GPP. 3GPP is the global standardization organization for the mobile industry. Basically everything that your smartphone or tablet is capable of doing is decided there and specified there. And some years ago, when the 5G project was actually launched, it came along with a big promise because they changed the approach. Before, it was really mobile industry. It was vendors and it was mobile operators. And they opened up the whole thing to invite vertical markets in order to come, provide their requirements and use cases, and they promised, well, we're going to find a solution for you. We'll come back to this at a second. At the moment, there are 7 so-called organizational partners, which are basically the regional standards development organizations. It's ETSI for Europe. That's, so to say, part of this process. And in fact, it's the biggest one. So most of the effort, most of the money is actually coming from Europe in this respect. There's currently 850 members from all over the world, all the big companies, you know, Apple, Google, Huawei, all the mobile operators, they're taking place in this. And there is something which is called market representation partners. It's basically organizations like the aforementioned 5G Media Action Group. It's a, so to say, an organization that brings together different players in the markets in order to facilitate and foster technologies, in this case, 3GPP technology. 3GPP does a lot of things that are relevant for media distribution and production and contribution, so for our business basically. Just to mention a few here, you know, there's 5G media streaming is basically a feature that allows better quality of experience, more control in OTT. NTT, non-terrestrial networks, is something that recently came up, very prominent with Elon Musk's SpaceLink and all the other low Earth orbit satellite systems that come up. However, for us at the moment as public service media, these two are the most, let's say, tangible. It's 5G broadcasting and non-public networks. 5G broadcasting for distributing linear live content, radio, television to smartphones and tablets, and non-public networks as a means to produce content and services. The 5G broadcast story actually started like almost 10 years ago, and for us as EBU, it became interesting because from a strategic point of view, smartphones, tablets, and all the mobile devices, in-car infotainment systems, they have been identified as the most strategically important devices. I mean, still everybody holds 1, 2, 3 of these devices, and basically we're glued to them, and we're doing everything all day. So from our perspective, you got to be there on these devices with all your content, irrespective whether it's linear or non-linear. So this got us going and started engaging. So actually following the call for verticals, we injected our requirements, which in this case was we would like to use our existing broadcast infrastructure network, the network infrastructure, high power, high tower stations, to independently deliver linear television services onto smartphones and tablets. A set of requirements were fed into this, and a long process took place, spanning over more than 3 releases now. And it basically just this year was kind of finished off when the final act, if you like, was taken to specify the spectrum that could be used for that. The most important bit is actually that this is it's not a mobile network. We're not talking about a mobile network. It's proper broadcasting under the 3GPP family of standards, and such a network can be operated by broadcast network operators. That is important. But that's not all. I mean, in times of crisis, in times of catastrophes, there was this flooding recently, not recently, some 2 years ago in Germany, that was kind of an eye-opener to a lot of politicians and also media people there. It became clear that the integration of emergency alerts, emergency services in such systems is absolutely vital. So basically what we did is we took what was there, cell broadcast and CMAS, integrated that so that you could use the 5G broadcast pipe to send a notification, an emergency warning notification, or even an emergency service. For example, a television program that tells people, for example, gives the information where to go in order to get food, water, or where to go in order to get some medical assistance. Now, as I said, even though this can be operated, 5G broadcast, as an independent broadcast network, still targeting a smartphone or tablet, that does not mean that it's an independent ecosystem. At the end of the day, we're operating on a smartphone, which basically means what we would like to do is to integrate all services that we're offering under one app. So it's integrating everything we offer, we deliver. It's linear services, it's emergency alerts, could be file delivery, and it's clearly anything that comes with on-demand services, so that from a user or consumer perspective, it's entirely transparent. Because people are not interested how certain content is delivered. It's only important that they have access to this content under the conditions they would like to use it. So, in short, 5G broadcast is a global broadcast standard under the family of standards of 3GPP. It's in line with internet-based OTT distribution, so it's a natural integration of all the technologies that are standardized in 3GPP, and we integrated the emergency alert capabilities. Now turning to the other part, after we started in 3GPP, there was the production colleagues coming to us and say, well, you've been successful with this, getting our requirements into the process. Couldn't we have a thought about using 5G for production as well? And so we started to engage again, formulating requirements and getting them into the process. Because, I mean, for us, in the first place, using this kind of technology under nomadic production conditions would be the most interesting use case. So the situation is something's happening, kind of a news gathering situation, an accident or something. The team goes out, sets up the base station, onboards all the devices, does the show or captures the scenery, and then after having done the production, goes home again. Now, in contrast to broadcast, to the 5G broadcast case, we didn't have to start from scratch. Because in 3GPP, there was already a lot of things that were actually, so to say, available at that time. It started with interworking with non-3GPP access, the device onboarding to some extent was already there, high precision positioning, edge compute, group communication. So in this case, the situation was slightly different. It was rather to find, so to say, the bits and elements where to attach to and modify them in order to make things happen in a way we wanted it to be. Non-public networks come basically in three flavors. The first one is the standalone version of it. As I just sketched, you go out, you do your thing yourself, it's your base station, it's your operation, it's your maintenance. So everything is under your control. But then there are two more flavors in here where you have some kind of collaboration with an existing public network. For example, if you go into a situation like a stadium where there is a public network, you could make use of that public network infrastructure and bring the two things together. So your own infrastructure plus resources that are provided by a mobile operator there, like for example, using the same RAN, radio access technology. And then the last version is basically kind of, well, just commissioning a non-public network under a public network. So in terms, for example, of a network slice that a mobile operator is offering. So in this respect, resources of a network are dedicated to you and you just use them as if you would have set up your own network, but actually it's a mobile operator behind it. Doing so requires spectrum. Now this is just an excerpt of what's going on in different countries where actually this kind of technology could be deployed or could be used. And you see in Germany it's the spectrum range 3738 gigahertz, where we can apply for a license in order to build our own non-public networks. So that's all great, but how can we use it? Because for the time being it's just paperwork. Now, what we've done some years ago is actually in SWR, we started to think about, can we do some trials, can we get a little bit more insight into what's going on there. So we kicked off two projects. One is still existing, this one not. This was 5G Media to Go, was a project to deal with 5G broadcast as a distribution means. Now, as you might know, Stuttgart is the city of the car manufacturers. There's Porsche and there's Mercedes-Benz. And since at that time, when we started that, there were no devices in the market, no smartphones that were able of receiving a 5G broadcast signal, then we decided, okay, let's have a look at infotainment systems in car, and let's develop something that's happening inside a car. receiving a signal, bringing to the car, and offering services on the infotainment system. And this is actually what we did. So we integrated linear television and radio services, access to our on-demand services, ARD Mediathek, and something which is called the geo-referenced recommendation engine on the infotainment system of the Porsche car. This year there was kind of a joint effort during the Olympics and the football championship in Europe taking place. So these companies, these public broadcasts in Germany did a trial together. So basically 5 cities in Germany, 5 stations on air, 5 high-power stations, reaching roughly 8 million people with our 5G broadcast signals. And we also investigated a little bit of the low latency case, because I mean you might know, and this is maybe a topic that may come up here later again, if you have a live transmission of a football match, for example, and your neighbor is watching via satellite, and you are watching via OTT, it might well be that it takes 20 to 30 seconds or even longer before you actually see the goal happening on your screen. So low latency in distribution of live events, in this respect at least, is something that is really important. Turning now to our other project, which is called Campus Network, 5G Campus Network. So we got the license on-prem in Baden-Baden, which is one of our locations in the southwestern part of Germany. We set up everything to cover this outside area, the TV garden area, and then we started to realize that instead of looking into heavy shoulder-borne cameras with 5G modems, naturally you would use a smartphone as a production mean, because I mean they are very good in the meantime. They offer 4K video quality, all of them basically. And if you look at one of the press releases of that's happening in your governments, and you see that most or many of the sort of the coverages in the meantime are using smartphones and no longer big cameras. So we started engaging in this, using smartphones for multi-camera production attached to a 5G network. And we started on-prem, but as I said before, the real interest was actually the nomadic use case. Now the problem is, in Germany, the regulatory framework is that you can get the license for your own premises, but for a nomadic setting, it's difficult because still the framework is not existing. So we're engaging with our regulator, but it's yet to be seen what's going to happen. So then we basically turned around and said, okay, let's, so to say, go the next step, and we will equip our studios in Baden-Baden now with 5G technology in order to be able to be more flexible, more agile in production, and having more wireless components there. This is just basically my final slide. Almost 2 years ago, we had a situation where in Offenburg, there was a carnival parade taking place after Corona, first time. And so we sent all the gear down. We put up the base station. You see the multicam production. You see the tablet with a director's app to, so to say, steer the process, take the pictures from the different incoming sources. And we fed back the signal, the live signal, to Baden-Baden, 2 ways, conventional SNG or live view, which is bonded cellular. In Baden-Baden, the signal was dash encoded and automatically put back as an OTT internet stream, so that colleagues in Offenburg could use their smartphones to see what is actually produced, thereby also experience the overall latency in the process. And at the same time, we fed the dash stream into our gateway for the 5G broadcast network. It was delivered to Stuttgart. This is the transmitter, transmitted as a 5G broadcast signal. And I had one of the few prototype smartphones at home so that I could watch the live signal from Offenburg. So basically we closed the loop from smartphone production to smartphone consumption of production that took place in Offenburg. So does 5G fulfill the promise that actually was given by 3GPP at the beginning? I'm not sure. The point is, and this is something, my key message I would like to convey to you, is actually, irrespective of this is really true or not, there are elements in this whole 5G universe where you, as a public service broadcasting company or any content provider, could actually become active yourself. You don't depend on mobile operators, on CDN providers, or anything like that. You can do your own thing and, so to say, retain control and contain costs. Thanks.